Hey guys, what's up? My name is Cameron Penner, and welcome to a great new video. Today I'm going to be showcasing a little bit of a program I made. Pretty much, this is an artificial intelligence guy, and pretty much you can choose a place, and he will find a path how to get there, and then he'll follow that path, and then he'll end up wherever you tell him to go. And he will find technically the shortest route, but the way he calculates the shortest route, there might actually be a quicker one with shortcuts. But yeah. Anyways, I'll just I'm not going to be going through the code of what I did because it's super messy, but I will be putting it up, so there should be a download link. But I warn you, it's a mess to go through all this stuff here. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but you can go ahead and try out the program for yourself. Anyways, what I am going to do is kind of explain the logic of how it works, and hopefully get that point across. I came up with this idea when I was trying to calculate pathfinding for a maze game that was top down, and I was like, well, I want to try this with platform stuff, so I went for it. So we're gonna say this is a starting spot, and we want them to end maybe around here. What I do is pretty much I calculate what space can he go to next, and then for that spot I calculate what are the options to go from that spot, and then until I cover all the spots up till colliding with the finish line, kind of. And then once I get there, then I trace that path back to the start. So I'll just show you a little bit what's up. So right now my guy's here, and he can jump up and he can walk to the side. And then I say that's one step, and then I move on to the next step, and I say from here he can jump up and he can move to the side, and then from here he can jump up and he can also jump up to the right. And now for this spot, he can jump up and up, or I guess here he could have jumped up too, and then to the side, right? And then here he can go and fall down to the side here. And now from all these spots, he can jump up to the side. He can jump up here potentially, but there's nothing under there, so he can't actually land there. And then he can jump here, and then he can move to the side. And then from here, he can jump up to the right, he can move to the side, and he can fall down to the left. And then we should have filled that in before. And then now technically we're at the end, but say if the end was somewhere else, we could just continue on and just say this guy can now jump up and he can move to the side. And this guy can move to the side, right? And then this guy might have fallen off the edge. But anyways, then what happens is when I get there, then what I've done is every step of the way I laid down a number, and then when I get there I just count that number back, and I find my path back to the start. So maybe I'll just go through a little bit of the code here. First I initialize the world, kind of. I choose my grid width, and I choose the size of the room. That happens automatically, and then I'm going to explain why some of these variables are messy in a little bit. But then these for loops, pretty much they go through my entire room, and then they say if there's a wall there, it sets the array. It's a two-dimensional array here. It sets that to -1, and if it's not a wall, then it sets it to 0. And it's a space he can travel. And then what happens is the bad guy, or the character that's being controlled with artificial intelligence, is going to then, he's going to plot a path, and then he's going to build a path, and then he's going to go follow the path or whatever. And so what plot path does is it creates an array for the path and initializes it to 0, and then it pretty much says, while it's not done, loop through the following. And the following is it goes through the whole grid and says, is there a number here? And if there is, then it'll try to flood the space. So what it's doing is it's checking, is this spot red? Like this? Is this spot red? Well, then I'm gonna try flooding it, and until I flood the whole map or get to the end, right? So if I can flood something, then I do that, and if say, because it just checks through the entire array, say it's over here, that's not a spot you want to be checking, so it just ignores that and it keeps moving on. And then if it flooded something, if flood space, like say the guy ended up the guy ended up falling in here, and then flood space gets called in here, it'll return false because it didn't do anything, right? And then this, pretty much what this does is, when it gets to the point where flood space isn't doing anything, then it'll stop looping, so I don't get an infinite loop in case it's impossible to find the target. Like say if the target was in this corner here, flood space would never reach it, but it would run out of places to move to. And then also if it finds the end of the path, then it's going to return true that it did find the end, and then it'll move on. So what flood space does is it does that checking, is can I move to the side, flood it, can I move up, flood that. So what hey, this is messy. So here he's just checking to the left, so that's one of these. Can I move here? Yes. And then here he's checking if he can jump to the left, and that is that's one of these. Is there no space here, but also no space here? Then I could actually technically move left, but I can't because there's I'll fall down. So it checks if there's a block here, and also if all of these spaces are free, because you need all these spaces to be free to be able to jump over to the next block. So it does that, and I'm not sure if it checks 3 blocks up or not. Yeah, it looks like it looks like it checks for all these 3. That all these blocks are free. And if they're all free, then he's allowed to jump to the left, and then it just places the next position right there. And then there's check to the right. That's the same except for the other way. And then there's check up for a vertical jump. All right, it looks like it just checks for this and this. And then moving on to check fall left. What this does is when the guy is here, it checks if there's space here and also space here. And then it says, keep going down until I bump into something, and then place the next position right there. And then check fall right is the same. And what happens is every time, if it works to place something, it'll set did something to true, and then it'll return did something. So if none of those spots are an option, then plot path is gonna end up saying no, the flood space didn't do anything, and then it'll return and stop looping and trying to look for spots. So after everything's been flooded and everything's been counted out, what happens is now build path is going to run, and it's going to go through that same array that we just made for the path, and it's going to kind of play that backwards. And what happens is whoops, here we go. What happens is every time we plot a path, we put a number down. So if we go like this, it says I can move here, yes, and I can move here, yes. And then now it says, okay, move on to finding spaces for the ones to go to. So then the ones say, this guy can go here, set that to 2, and this guy can go here, set that to 2. And now for this guy, it says this guy can go here, set that to 3, and he can go here, set that to 3. And then it moves on, this guy can move here, 4, and this guy can move here. I think it, no, I don't think it checks that, actually. Maybe it does. Yes, it does. And then it moves on to, no, it doesn't. Just kidding. And then it moves on to the next one. This one says 4 can go here. I think it might put one there too. I'm not sure. This is I made this a long time ago, and I'm going through it again. So this is also gonna put one here and here, and then this one's gonna say, yeah, I can go here, and then we're just gonna skip these other ones over here. And then this one can go here and here. This one can go like that, and then this one can go like that. And then what happens is, now we got to the end, and it's gonna say, okay, 9, 8, and then 8's gonna find this 7, and then 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then we're at the end. So and it'll check down before it checks sideways, so it won't ever choose this one by accident and do something weird. So that's how it traces backwards, and you can look through that code for yourself, I guess. And then show path was just for bug testing, and plot previous is the thing, is pretty much, it's exactly the same as flood space, except it goes backwards. So it just checks for the previous spot, and then if it finds a previous number, then it plots it in the path. And then move horizontal is just script that I put in for the bad guy for when he's actually moving around. So now that the whole path is plotted, what we do is here, if go, which we set go to true once the path has been built. And then what happens is, if the target is to the left, he moves left, and if it's to the right, then he moves right. And then here, if the target is above us, then we'll jump. And if the what is this? This is if we're close enough to the target that and the target is only the next block right to the side, right? This is the next position in the path. If we're close enough to that position there, then it's going to say, okay, ignore that, set my next position to the next point in the path. And then he moves on to that. And then it says path target to +1. And then pretty much this just sets the gravity for him, and this limits the falling speed. And all the other stuff that's kind of default for a game. And then what you can do is, see if I didn't test this ahead of time, but we're going to fire in a guy here and get rid of this. Oh, I need to figure that out. And then what we can do is we can make this every 30 seconds they replot their path to and we're going to look for object guy, and this is going to be object guy, and that'll just round off the number. That's what floor does, is it rounds down. So now what we can do is, if we, yeah, that'll be all right. Now if we run this, you're gonna see all the guys are gonna be chasing me, and they're pretty good. What happens is, it's a little that's pretty impressive. It's a little, it'll be slow because they're flooding the entire map every step, right? Which is really inefficient. I'm sure there are better ways of doing this, but that's the way I came up with, and that's that's my little showcase for today. What happens is, here now I'll just talk a little bit about what's with some of this code here. Unfortunately, GameMaker has funny rules of scoping, or whatever you want to call it, where pretty much if one function or script in GameMaker is has a variable, that variable carries over even in another piece of code. So if you take some code from one of your other games and you copy it in, just something that's going to run in the background, it might not work because your new game might have might use one of the similar variables, and it'll end up just messing everything up. That's why sometimes I have XX and sometimes I have y, like the YY, and I think in some of them I have like AX and AY, and it just gets like this AY AYY, because I couldn't use X, so I just did X twice for the for loops. But and here I could get away with using the same variables for the for loops because the loop exits before it moves on to another one. So that's why my code is super messy, is because I'm not used to dealing with a programming language that doesn't have rules like that. Pretty much the rules apply to any variable that you create with any script in one object, apply to any other scripts you run in that object. So it can be handy because you can control other variables outside of just the one function, but it's really it's really tricky when you end up with having lots of loops. And I know there are better ways of doing loops sometimes, but if I'm going to be using these variables in the array anyways, then it's just I need to do a for loop for that. So that's that. I thought it was pretty cool, so that's why I showed you guys, and hope you enjoyed the video. You can go ahead and try to optimize it however you like. But till then, I'll see you guys next time.